Cut it right to now.
There we go. There we go.
Cut it right to now. So, because you're in, Ohio, right? Uh,
Yes. Yeah.
Columbus,
Columbus, Ohio.
Ohio.
Yep. How about
Okay.
yourself?
So I'm located in Lawrence, Kansas,
Okay.
and so I think I shot you an email saying that I'm originally from Ohio and
Yeah.
Westerville, Ohio,
Yep. Okay.
suburb right outside Columbus, and came out here on a football scholarship and been out here ever since. Met the wife and had the 2.4 kids and 1.5 dog and white picket
Right.
fence.
Right. Right. Exactly. Nah, it's
And
good stuff.
yeah, well, good deal, man. Well, let me. I guess we can go ahead and hit that intro and kind of jump right into it.
Let's get
Um,
it.
hey guys, what's going on? This is Pat Brown, I'm a financial advisor with Edmonds Duncan out of Lawrence, Kansas, where I played football for University of Kansas years and years and years and years ago. Um, Enjoyed my time there, met a lot of great people, became very, very passionate about financial literacy for student athletes. And so during that process, I started this interviewing process where I interview um, former student athletes to help current student athletes learn successes and failures. And so as time has gone on, a lot of things have changed with athletes or student athletes with regards to name, image, likeness, to where athletes are able to profit off their name, image, likeness. And so I want to start doing a series of interviews with people, professionals that are in that space to give some type of exposure for parents as well as student athletes so that they can at least be aware of what's going on. And so one of the gentlemen that I have here before me now, I've found on LinkedIn, just interesting brother. I mean, he has the stuff together. And he started kind of talking about knowledge just through some of his other videos that I've watched. And so I just wanted to get him on here and just, again, kind of get parents and these student athletes exposed to this information. So Luke, I want to make sure I pronounce your last name. Is Fedlam?
Fedlam. Like
Fedlam. Okay.
Bedlam, but Fedlam. Yeah.
Okay. And so now you're a partner at Porter Wright Morris and Arthur, an attorney there in Columbus, Ohio. So, man, I appreciate, like I said, your time for coming on.
No, absolutely, Pat. Thanks so much for having me. It is just to hear your kind of intro on things, name, image, and likeness, and all that, man. Like I'm on the edge of my seat because I feel like we're about to have a really great conversation. There's so
Yes,
much
sir.
happening. I mean, without getting into it too quickly, name, image, and likeness is potentially the biggest, going to have the largest impact economically for sure, and in other ways as well on college sports in the last 70 years since the NCAA started offering, since schools started offering sports scholarships. So definitely going to be an interesting conversation. Looking forward to it.
So I guess kind of talk about your background a little bit. I know you work with a lot of professional athletes as well. And so this literally is your space that we're talking about here. So yeah, kind of go into your background and where you came from, and then we can kind of get into the NIL.
Sure. So, like you mentioned earlier, I'm a partner and the head of the sports law practice at Porter Wright. We're a large law firm of about 250 attorneys, headquartered in Columbus, Ohio, which is where I currently live. And we've got offices in 8 different cities. And I lead our sports law practice, which means I work with individual professional athletes across the country and around the world on issues that I can tell you student athletes are going to be dealing with when it comes to name, image, and likeness. So I'm not an agent. I'm a sports attorney. So it's really like I act as general counsel for professional athletes. So anything that they're going to sign their name to, we want to review to ultimately make sure that they're educated on what it is and that they're protected as they make their decision. So whether that's going through their agent selection process, through their marketing endorsement opportunities, all the way to estate planning, tax issues, real estate, due diligence, private investment due diligence, intellectual property protections, and the list goes on and on. Originally from upstate New York, I ran track for about 37 seconds. It seems like when I was at Wake Forest University for undergrad. I ran for about a semester and a half and was like, thank God for an academic scholarship because
You're done?
yeah, I wasn't. I mean, I was high school good, but I wasn't like ACC good. And so, for me, it was great because again, at that time, as you talked about, right? These are years and years and years and years ago. And all the opportunities weren't there for student athletes like they are now, right? So I was able to I went and studied abroad for a semester, had some phenomenal experiences in college, and always held an appreciation for, friends who were student athletes and others. And so the opportunity now, as we start to think about this impact that name, image, and likeness is going to have, great opportunity to be able to try to educate to ultimately protect these student athletes.
So if you kind of bring us up to date, I know the NCAA had kind of kicked the can down the road a little bit with regards to what's going on. So if you kind of essentially what's going on now with the NIL. I mean, COVID kind of pushed things back as well.
Yeah, Pat, listen, we're just getting to know each other a little bit, and I'll tell you, I have a lot of energy. And so when you ask a question like that, man, it's like you turn that knob and it's like you're about to let me go. So you're gonna have to give me those hand signals to be like, yo, Luke, all right, stop, man. We only got so much time. Because listen, the question that you ask is the number one question that I get asked right now, which is where are things? Where do things stand? So we all know, that the NCAA, delayed indefinitely their vote on name, image, and likeness. So let's think about this real quick, and I'll try to give a super concise overview, because there are a lot of different stakeholders, a lot of different organizations and elements involved in name, image, and likeness. So you've got the NCAA, right? We hit on that. So the NCAA, the D1 Council, was supposed to vote on name, image, and likeness legislation back in January, like the 11th or so. The Department of Justice came in and said, hey, your plan around name, image, and likeness might involve some antitrust issues, and so we recommend that you don't vote on this right away. And so the NCAA decided to push and hold off indefinitely. So that's the NCAA. You've also got the Supreme Court of the United States, right? So the Supreme Court is looking at NCAA versus Alston. That's a case, comes out of the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals that really is an antitrust case, and it's looking at what limitations can colleges and universities, the NCAA, put on the compensation of student athletes, if any at all. And this is the first time that the Supreme Court has heard an NCAA case since 1984, and it's an antitrust case. So again, we're going to hear oral arguments at the end of March, and probably by the end of June, we should have a ruling back from the Supreme Court for them to weigh in on this matter. But then we also have state legislatures, and we all know what's going on at the state level, where California kind of kicked things off with their Bill 206, which went into law. They tried to work a little bit with the NCAA to say, hey, we won't have it go into effect until 2023. But then fast forward, other states came up. Florida said, hey, we're doing this. They passed their legislation. Their law is supposed to go into effect July 1st of this year. Yeah. Iowa right now has bipartisan legislation for their name, image, and likeness to come out effective July 1st of this year, assuming that it gets passed. You have other states that have passed legislation. I think 3 or 4 other states that have passed legislation, and you have 35 other states who have either considered it, are currently considering it, or have something in the works right now. So that's the state level. And then take one step backwards and we got, the congressional level, right? And so it's this federal dynamic of, we've had so much as it relates to proposed legislation at the federal level. Most recently, Senator Murphy from Connecticut proposed, and I forget the name of it off the top of my head, but it has to do with student athlete economic bill, where it's going, or economic freedom, I think is part of the name. And basically what that's going to do is would give student athletes the rights to, again, be compensated based on their name, image, and likeness. But it also is the first federal legislation that's been introduced that also talks to the high school level, and this pre-NCAA enrollment phase of giving them the similar rights. It talks about without going as far as talking about unionization. It does talk about collective negotiation instead of necessarily collective bargaining, but collective negotiation and potentially group licensing. So again, when you think about this, yes, it's the NCAA, maybe kicking the can down the road, but part of that's because they're going to have to see how does the Supreme Court weigh in on this. The state legislatures, we know, are going to continue to weigh in, and then obviously at the federal level, we're going to see something as well.
This is a mess.
It's a lot, right? It's a lot. Whew, like I got to take a drink of water here in a second. Like, that's just, there's a lot going on. And the NCAA is trying to thread that needle to figure out how they can make it work.
So, and this is a question as again, a lot of people that are kind of in this space, but from a parent standpoint, what should parents of student athletes be thinking about? What should they be asking, these schools that are recruiting their kids?
Yeah, the number one question, and I can't stress this enough. Let me look into the camera, right, to stress this. The number one thing right now is that parents should be asking coaches who are recruiting their kids, compliance departments, the head AD, whoever you have access to, what are you going to do to educate and prepare my son or daughter for name, image, and likeness? The education is the critical piece, right? We know for a fact, when you look at the companies like Open Doors, Influencer, CLC, and others that are coming into the space in droves to create the marketplace, right? To create the branding opportunities for commercialization. That's great. We know that those will exist, and whether it comes out that schools can actually engage those organizations, to create the marketplace, or whether student athletes will have to go to them directly and independently is yet to be seen. But we know that they will be there to help athletes commercialize. But what's being done to help athletes now understand what does that mean, right? This is the space that I deal with every day with professional athletes who, have never seen an endorsement deal before or a marketing contract before, have never thought about the fact that they're now hiring a marketing agent. So think about that now, even 2, 3, 4 years earlier at the age of 17, 18, 19, right? Where you're thinking about, I'm signing a contract with someone who's going to do my marketing. How do I get out of that contract? How do they get paid? How do I hold them accountable? How do I even trust that I can, that they're not going to take advantage of me, right? Now I'm thinking about like, hey, how about the fact that we're talking about financial readiness and financial literacy. Let's talk about taxes. Let's talk about financial aid. Let's talk about money management from a business perspective, because this is the type of education, real world, practical, honest education that's grounded in independence and objectivity. This is what student athletes and their families will need to understand. They'll need to understand the fact that when you get paid on a marketing deal, you will always get paid gross. Because you're not an employee, because you're an independent contractor, they'll pay you in gross. So yes, you may have just made, $10,000 on an opportunity, but guess what? You don't get to just go spend all $10,000, and helping them understand that. So there is a lot to unpack here. I mean, this aspect, I get it, right? These are amateur athletes, but they're going to be amateur athletes who are participating in a professional business outside of their sport, this marketing and endorsement type of business. And that's what they have to be prepared for. And let's not get it twisted. Let's be honest and transparent. We're not just talking about the elite of the elite that are going to have these huge deals and all that kind of stuff, right? That's what media is going to follow, like, the quarterbacks, right? The star basketball players, right? We're going to read all about that. But let's talk about social media influencing. Let's talk about UCLA's women's gymnastics team that has one of the most the highest number of impressions in social media in college sports right now. Let's talk about the fact that your synchronized swimmer, right, is going to be able to go back to their hometown and tutor other swimmers on how do you get a D1 scholarship, or how do you navigate these, and coaching and clinics and all this kind of stuff. So business opportunities will exist, and we have to help prepare these student athletes for those opportunities, and it comes through education.
That's that's a mouthful.
It is. I know you asked a short question, but I had to give you the totality of the answer, man, because this is the stuff that fires me up. This is what we need to be talking about.
So the phrase that you use, amateurs in a professional business, I mean, that says volumes Uh, and I'm trying to think when I was that age, how do you wrap your mind around that? As a young man or young lady, you're going to be dealing with grown decisions that you're going to have to make.
Yeah.
Um, I, that's going to be tough.
It is going to be tough, and the challenge is to the way you even phrase that comment, right? Wrap your head around it. What's going to happen if they're not prepared is that they're not going to wrap their head around it. They're not even going to attempt. They're going to say, oh, if I do this opportunity, I'm going to get $1,000, or I'm going to get 2,500 bucks, or $5,000, whatever the number is. I'm just going to do it. Oh, they want me to sign something? I'll sign it. I don't care what I signed, right? Because I'm going to get $5,000 or whatever. And they don't realize everything that they might be giving up in terms of intellectual property rights or others. What happens if they get injured, right? I mean, think about this, right?
Oh,
One part of contracts, and I deal with these contracts all day, every day. Most of the time, what the athlete and the athlete's agent care most about are two things. How much do they get paid, and what do they have to do, right? What do you get paid? What do you have to do? That information is usually on page 1, right? But then there's 7, 10, 15, whatever number more pages that have words that mean something afterwards. And one section that comes up quite a bit that most, in fact, in my career, I've never had an athlete proactively asking me about is indemnification. Indemnification basically means who can you hold responsible and for what? And the
yeah.
reason that's so important is imagine you're a student athlete that has an opportunity to go do a photo shoot for a local pizza place that's on your campus. They're going to pay you 2,500 bucks and free pizza for the year if you do this. And so you decide to go and do it. And let's just say, whatever, pick a sport. You're a volleyball player. You go, you do it. They set up all the lighting and all this kind of stuff. And they were negligent in how they set up the system, their lighting system. And somehow a light fixture falls on you, injures you, and you're not able to play your sport because of that injury. What happens? What happens? Is the school going to look at it and say, maybe we're going to withdraw your scholarship? You know, are you going to be able to turn around and file a lawsuit or go after that, either the photography company or the marketing company that set it up, or the actual pizza place, right? The brand itself? Like, who can you hold responsible? All that information, the rights that you have, that comes in the contract. That has to be negotiated for. And when I see these contracts regularly, typically you see things like gross negligence or willful misconduct, right? Those are legal phrases that have been negotiated, and they mean that someone had an intent to cause injury or cause harm. When I look at these things, we negotiate to basic negligence, right? You had a duty, the photography company, the brand had a duty to ensure a safe environment, and if they failed in that duty, then you should be able to protect yourself against them. So it's these kind of things that, yes, it is an absolute professional business. And my fear is that if we're not proactive in providing the education that matters, what we're going to see are situations where players will just say, I'm just going to focus on my sport. If they're going to put money in my pocket, I'll take it. I'll figure it all out later. Because guess what? We were all 18, 19, 21s. We know what that's like, and that's probably what we would have done.
Man, you open up a can of worms. So if I'm 18 years old and okay, let's say that I did wrap my mind somewhat halfway of what you're saying. I'm coming into school. Again, let's just be transparent again. If I'm coming from a situation, a background, inner city, single parent, 10, 11, again, I'm being facetious here. I'm not going to have the means to pay, a Luke X amount of dollars to protect me, although I know I need it. How do I, what are students are going to do about that?
Yeah, great question. So one of the things that I'm trying to do, and so you mentioned early on, I'm a partner at a law firm, but because I've worked with athletes for a number of years, I start to see trends. I start to see where athletes may not have all of kind of the personal and professional life skills, opportunities throughout their development, and so I want to take the learning that we see and turn it into workshops, presentations, conversations. Started a company a few years ago called Anomaly Sports Group. Anomaly is just focused on education, right? It's all we focus on is, we've done some work with the NBA, with different NFL teams, with college athletic departments to try to talk to groups of student athletes, to give them processes to give them ways to think through and deal with these types of situations. And so I've been trying to shout from the mountaintop around this education, because you're right. A lot of student athletes aren't going to have necessarily the type of deals that would necessitate paying for, someone like myself, right? But yet they still need the education. So we're excited that, hopefully in the next 4 to 8 weeks, we're going to be launching an app where you're going to be able to go in and just like get some of this learning and all this kind of stuff. But to that end, that's where student athletes have to recognize that it is a business, a professional, kind of system around them, and do what they can to both educate themselves and demand from their organization, their institution, their college athletic department, real world practical education. And the schools should be paying for that. The schools, now you really get me started. Like, this is where I really just go, which is the ethics of athlete education. I believe very, very strongly that it is an ethical imperative that athletes at all levels are educated and provided education in a way that prepares them for success outside of their sport, period. Mm-hmm. So when there's been a lot of this conversation, especially leading up to whether athletes should get paid or not get paid and all that. And they talk about, how their education is their payment, right? All right, well, if education is a payment, then don't just give me the economics 101 class, right? And the physiology, 201 class. No. Give me the practical real world education so that I understand how to manage my budget. Give me the practical real world education to understand how do I deal with the life that I'm in and the business that is now going to be happening around me. So the long, I was about to say the short answer to your question, getting longer answer to your question is really making sure that you as a student athlete are seeking out education, because it's out there. You can start to learn about some of these things, but you also don't know what you don't know. So forcing and pushing the school by saying, hey, what are you doing to help educate us as student athletes, and making sure that we're prepared for all of the people that are going to want to try to say, hey, I can get you some deals. I know this local dealership in Lawrence, Kansas. I can get you a truck for the 4 years that you're playing football there, and they'll even throw in $500 a semester. All right, great. What are you giving up? What's the impact on insurance? What happens if you're in an accident? It goes on and on and on.
Man, so, when you mentioned some of that stuff and you mentioned just the education, I believe that wholeheartedly. I'm trying to think. When I was coming up, you get recruited, they get you into the university, and it's all about scheduling your schedule to fit the benefit of that school, so that you're there for practice, you're there for meetings, etc. I'm saying that to say, would they necessarily force a particular educational class for a student, or, hey, go ahead and take that basket weaving 101, take baseball 101, make sure that you get it for this meeting. So I'm really trying to put it in perspective. I don't know if you have, I know it happens, but if you have athletes that are coming in and they just slide in because of athletic ability, are they going to want to take a class that's going to empower them, like you just mentioned, because they're young, and number one, they think they're going to go to the league in the next 2 years, and you get this cycle that I see that, it's you're chewed up, you're done, you didn't get a degree, you didn't make it to the league, and now you're, from a mental standpoint, you're struggling. I know that's not everyone.
Yeah, no, I think, for all of your listeners, what Pat just said is 100% spot on, and here's why. It's a challenge because we all know that less than 2% of college athletes are going to play their sport professionally. We know this. But we also know that 52% believe that they're going to be in that 2%. Like 52% believe that they're going. And these are actual statistics. The NCAA has put this information out. We've seen that, right? So when you think about that, to your point, that is an absolute issue, because you have athletes that are coming in that do not have a chance to play professionally, but that because they believe if they just focus on their sport, they're good because they're going pro.
Yep.
And coaches buy into that because that's how they can maximize the output that that athlete gives them. So what you then have is, I don't need to focus on these academics because I'm going to be making, even if I just make league minimum, I'm making $500,000 a year in the NFL, right? Well, the challenge with that is, or rather the response to the challenge is, schools owe it to provide more than just the academic education aspects, right? And we could have a whole discussion, a whole episode conversation on just ways in which schools can put together their curriculum in a way that focuses on the actual important courses that student athletes would benefit from, like digital storytelling, entrepreneurship, business finance, all those kind of things, setting up a business entity, whatever. But the real world practical education that can come from having folks like yourself, myself, others who are in the space who deal with this every single day and know the pitfalls to look out for, that know the hurdles and the challenges, and that can connect with these student athletes in a way that they want to then learn that. Because you've got to find a way. If you're a coach, you're a successful coach, has the ability to find a way to get everything I possibly can out of you and your performance, right? My job as a lawyer, your job in finance and beyond, we have to be able to figure out, how can I tell a story or give an example or share something with you in a way that helps you understand how critically important it is that we look at page 7, 8, and 9 of this contract, right? It's not, I'm not trying to make more sports lawyers out there. If that's a byproduct of my speaking engagement stuff, that's great. That's great. Hopefully more people hear what I'm doing and say, I want to do that. But I'm sharing it in a way so that athletes can say, you know what? I remember that dude that spoke to our team said something about, I should look at my financial aid to decide whether I should do this deal, because if I take this deal, it may put me out of eligibility for this Pell Grant, which means now I got to do this kind of cost benefit, right? Like, I may not be the one to figure it all out myself, but didn't somebody talk to me about that? It's about causing someone to pause so that they can make an informed and educated decision about the business that affects them.
Man, you're speaking my language. Boys, this is a good Friday conversation, man. I'm telling you.
And I can talk about this stuff all day, man, because this is, to me, when you think about name, image, and likeness, so many people want to focus on the deals. And what you'll hear, typically, two schools of thought. People that want to talk about how it's just going to be for the elite athletes and not for anybody else. And then others who will talk about how it's just all about brands. They want to talk about how much money student athletes can make. And you're right. It is fascinating to talk about. It's fascinating to talk about social media influencing and how much you could make off of a tweet, off of an IG post, off of a TikTok. But what's more important is, okay, how are you going to protect yourself from that agent that wants to bring you a deal? How are you going to protect yourself when it comes to, understanding the money that comes in? Like, if you're actually doing a lot of stuff, a lot of deals and opportunities, should you create an LLC as a loan out company, right? To give you some liability protection, potentially give you some write-offs from some of your expenses. But if that, then how are you going to make sure that that party is the party to the agreement as opposed to you individually, and making sure that the payment that you receive goes to the entity and not to you individually, and to make sure that you don't just treat your business entity bank account like it's your personal every time you go out, go shopping and all that kind of stuff. Like, all of that stuff, man, people, that's the nitty gritty. That's where the rubber hits the road. And that's where people aren't talking. And the reason why this is so important to me, because to your point, and I'll just put it straight out there, that so often we know that this is going to have an impact on the Black community in certain ways that maybe it doesn't necessarily have an impact on their white counterparts in all of the same ways. And what we do know is that education is that critical piece. And if you have opportunity without education, you are setting student athletes up for failure when they leave, and they're going to be in a worse position when they leave school than when they came in and started. And that, to me, is a failure that continues to perpetuate the idea of athletes being used for their physical abilities as opposed to preparing them to be successful so that they can have a positive impact on themselves, their families, and their communities when they leave.
Preach!
Man, seriously. So.
Wow. Yeah, you hit on the head. That circle, that vicious circle. And, exposure, exposure, education is the key. Man. So look,
You got
we got
you got me fired up on a Friday, man.
you got me fired up too, man. That's some good stuff. Wow. And we even hit half the stuff that I'm gonna talk about, but we got to do this. We got to do this again for real.
Absolutely. Listen, I'd love to. As I said, I love talking about this because the more people can hear it, the more people can hear it. Like I get a lot of times, I'm involved with, I help to launch the College Basketball Parents Association. It's called
Yes.
the CBPA. If you're the parents of college basketball players at any level, D1, D2, D3, HBCU, JUCO, doesn't matter. Men's and women's, doesn't matter. If you're a parent, go to thecbpa.org. You can sign up. It's free to sign up. It's all about creating opportunities for education. And one of the things that I get from parents a lot is, especially at the high school level, because we have high school parents that have joined as well, because they want to get that information as they're going through the recruiting process. And to your earlier question about recruiting, a lot of times people will ask the question, and parents will ask the question like, what should I be asking about? I don't even know. Like nobody's really telling me what I should be asking the coach that's coming to recruit or whoever they're bringing with them, right? And one of the things that I talk about is you have so much power at that point. The leverage that parents and high school student athletes have when going through the recruiting process, if they only knew how much leverage they have. And so to ask the questions and demand tangible evidence of what they would do to help prepare your student athlete. Because here's the bottom line. If you're a student athlete that has the opportunity to be a part of that 2% that actually makes it to play professionally in whatever your sport is, great. You will not experience a disservice by learning practical, financial, contractual, legal information. Right? Yeah. You're not going to be worse off by getting education around how to manage your finances, around understanding the due diligence of people who want to work with you. You will not be worse off. In fact, you will be better off. And if you're part of the 98% that aren't going to go pro, then how great would it be for you to have real world understanding of decision making, how to make an informed decision, having a process that you can rely on so that when you start thinking about am I going to go to grad school or am I going to go, get a job, or a career job when I graduate? Like, you're not worse off. So if I'm a parent and I've got a 10-year-old and a 6-year-old, so when I get to that point, if they happen to be athletes, and my daughter's in the 98th percentile for height. I'm just saying she keeps growing, so you never know. But like, throw it out there. Think about what they might go through. That's what I'm asking. What are you doing to make sure that my son or daughter is going to be successful in life? Yes, I understand, coach, that you're going to maximize and get everything out of them. Yes, I understand that your trainer is going to put muscle mass on them and grow them, and they're going to have a chance to play at another level. I get that. But what I care about is, what are you going to do for them to be successful? Because guess what? Even if you play professionally in football, you're going to be playing for 3.4 years on average.
On average. Yep.
On average. So guess what?
Depends on what position you play. It could be less.
That's right. Could be less. So, so if you're 25, 26 when you're done playing, and maybe you played, your professional experience was, making league minimum or what have you, which is more common than not. Yeah. What are you going to do at 26? What are you doing for the rest of your life? So the skills that these schools can provide now, that's where it's critically important.
My man, this was good. Well, I feel good.
Yes, sir.
I could go home for the rest of the day right now, man. That's pretty good.
No, listen, I appreciate you having me on, because this stuff, this is the important stuff. This is stuff that people need to hear.
Definitely. Well, yeah, listen, let's do it again. I'll reach out again, and we can tackle something else, man. I definitely appreciate your time.
I appreciate yours. Thanks for having me. Happy to be here anytime. Reach out. Let's do it.
Yes, sir. Hey, man, you take care. Have a good weekend.
All right, you too, Pat. Take care.
Yep. Bye-bye.